we haven't just put our head to sea, work out, get outside, get in the sun, largest senior populations, for example. So what I would tell my audience, and I told my audience from the very beginning, vitamin D, vitamin C, work out, get outside, get in the sun. If you've got elderly, if anybody has a sniffle or a cold, social distance unless you test negative. I mean, we haven't just put our heads in the sand on our show about this whatsoever, but we've actually followed established science like Rand Paul was grilling Anthony Fauci with about a week ago in the Senate. When it comes to this vaccine, what I've urged my audience is, unless you're in a high-risk group or you're elderly, first of all, why are you getting in the way of somebody in the high-risk group anyway? That's kind of selfish. Let them go first. And then secondly, just observe the real-time data. We didn't go through a normal FDA approval process, so just observe the real-time data about efficacy and safety. Pretty much, unless you're over the age of 75 with an immune deficiency, this virus, if you were to get it, you're going to survive it about 99.6% of the time. So I don't know why you'd be in a hurry to rush out and get an experimental vaccine under those.
So, yeah, this is writer Steve Deese. This is on The Blaze with Glenn Beck. Great interview. Talking about how Dr. Fauci is one of the most dangerous bureaucrats as far as influencers in U.S. history. And he's making some really good points. I'm going to go ahead and hit some highlights here in just a moment.
I asked if it was approved by the FDA, but I think that it's a different thing an emergency use authorization than an approval. So what is the difference between an emergency use authorization and an official approval by the FDA?
Yes, that's a very good question. So an emergency use authorization is based on the criteria if the benefit clearly outweighs the risk and that you get a good degree of efficacy and safety. The full licensure is when you follow it for a longer period of time and you get more information and data. I have no doubt, given how very, very efficacious all three of these are, that they will ultimately get the full authorization in the sense of what's called.
Okay, so let's get back to it. Play a few minutes from this clip. Also post a link to the full video as well.
The most powerful and dangerous bureaucrat in American history. That's quite a statement.
14, 15 months ago, Glenn, we didn't know who Anthony Fauci was.
Yeah.
And in that short amount of time, he has, without a single vote cast, even by mail, not a single vote cast, has rearranged the lives of every American family, every American business, every American school, every American church. Need I go on? To the point, can we actually step outside our homes and breathe free air? That is now a current debate. Now, if that's not the most powerful and dangerous bureaucrat in American history, then by golly, I don't want to know who is.
Well, according to the CDC and Joe Biden, if we let our guard down now, we'll see the virus get worse, not better. And I know that Texas let its guard down about 20 days ago, and we're still declining in hospitalizations and infections.
This book is a reference guide, Glenn. It has more references and footnotes than pages. And a lot of it, EC director told us that a useless face diaper from China would protect him from COVID-19 even more than the vaccines. We might as well go outside and rain dance, moon dance. This is flat earth voodoo. It has to stop. Yep. And that's why for this book, we bypass the normal publishing process of hardcovers and distribution that mornings he comes at me for fake news. And he makes this claim that 0.25% of all people in the UK have died of COVID-19. I just did the math of population and death in 3 seconds. That's not true. That's his own, this is a doctor with a book and 60,000 Twitter followers. This isn't, Pez Dispenser Me 14 with 5 people following him. And so this goes on constantly. I've never seen a stream of disinformation like this. people like you and I that have been in this conservative media game for a long time, we've been told for 20 years we need to be more like Sweden. Suddenly we forgot Sweden. Rectum barely knew them. We don't know what a Sweden is. It's like they fell off a map, never existed. The amount of gaslighting, that's one. How come only experts with one particular, number one, how come only that are raised by this book, number one, how come only experts with one particular narrative were considered experts and were mainstreamed and were used by the White House Coronavirus Task Force, our own media, etc., when we had experts from the very beginning, from Oxford, the #1 university in the world, Harvard, Yale, Carnegie Mellon. Glenn, these are all places that believe in global warming and 57 genders too, and they all thought this was flat earth junk science, these lockdowns, and yet they were totally ignored. We give you all their names, all their citations in this book. We need to know the answer to that. And then number two that we have to get an answer to is what changed from February 28th of last year to March 11th. On February 28th, 2020, Anthony Fauci wrote in the New England Journal of Medicine that when we got done with this, when we looked at the IFR, the infection fatality rate for COVID-19, it would be that of about a bad pandemic flu. That's where Trump got it's a bad flu talking point. Trump just parroted Fauci his entire final year of his administration, and now look what happened. He's not in the White House. And so he wrote that on February 28th, Glenn. On March 11th, just 11 days later, and just 3 days after he went on 60 Minutes and told Americans not to wear masks, 3 days later after that, and 11 days after he wrote that in the New England Journal of Medicine, he went to Congress, said that this was going to be basically captain trips, college basketball, and the NBA shut down that night. The country was shut down less than a week later, and for the better part of the next year. What changed? What new piece of data did Anthony Fauci acquire? What information stream did he get access to from February 28th to March 8th when he was singing a totally different song to March 11th when he sounded the shofar on this thing? We need to know the answer to that, and there's two reasons why, Glenn. Number one, so that we never fall for this form of authoritarianism ever again. But then number two, when we finally do get a contagion that may actually be a history book or biblical level event, and now we've conditioned a bunch of our people to just ignore it because Anthony Fauci is such a fraud. We need to get to the bottom of the truth here, Glenn.